Thank you for joining us on the mother of all talk shows. It came as quite a surprise to me that in Washington they haven't agreed to cry uncle. They still believe that they can regime change the government in Syria, and they are still prepared to sanction and starve Syrians in that pursuit. Have I got that right?
Yeah, George, thanks for having me. Yeah, so as we all know, in 2019, the Caesar Sanctions Act was passed in the United States Congress. It was co-authored by Elliot Engels, representative of Bronx, not too far from here. He's one of the highest recipients of AIPAC money in the entire United States government. He received almost $2 million from them. And immediately, international organizations, the United Nations, Elena Dohan, the special rapporteur on sanctions and the enjoyment of a dignified humanitarian life, commented and said that these sanctions are inhumane and illegal. They are secondary sanctions. They impose sanctions on countries that do business with a sanctioned entity. They are sectoral. They target sectors as a whole. They target sectors, anything that has to do with construction, energy, finance, and we've seen the consequences of these atrocious starvation sanctions on the Syrian people. We see now that 90% of the Syrian population is below the poverty line. We see that 51% of the population is food insecure. And as I'm sure you know, you've been to Syria before. When I was young, I remember the Syrian pound exchanging 40-1 with the US dollar. Now it's unfortunately 15,000. So you're talking about a devaluation of about 35,000%. So the situation is nothing short of immiseration that's been intentionally targeting the Syrian civilians in Syria. Professor Joshua Landis, an expert on Syria, noted in an interview that I conducted with him, saying Bashar al-Assad, the government in Syria, are eating beautifully. Now, I don't know how our president eats, but I can say for sure that the Syrian government are not eating well because of these sanctions. And I can also point out to something that's very important, that the majority of Syrians are currently living under the control of the Syrian government, which the West malignly calls under the Syrian regime, or they call them Assadists, or they call them Assadist loyalists, or they call them Assadist apologists. Irregardless of their political positions, they live under the control of the Syrian government in proper Syria, and they are not receiving aid from the United States, like the aid that the United States sends to the canton of Al-Qaeda in Northwest, or to the Make-Wish state of Rojava for the Kurds in the Northeast. The majority of the Syrian people, 12 million plus, are living in Damascus. They're living in Aleppo, my home city. They're living in Latakia. They're living in Tartus, in Hama, in Homs. And these people are struggling and they're suffering under this. Imagine the knee of the entire United States foreign apparatus on your neck as a miserly Syrian civilian. So as I sent you in the article that should be published today or tomorrow morning, this latest effort by the anti-Syria lobby on Washington that happened last Thursday was essentially to push for more sanctions and to extend the Caesar Sanctions Act for 8 more years. It was supposed to sunset in 2024 by the end of this year. But no, they decided that the Syrian people have not suffered enough and they should suffer for 8 more years up until 2032.
What do they imagine they can achieve by these things? They can create misery, of course. They can make more people hate them even more than they did before. But they're not going to change the government in Syria. They threw everything, including the kitchen sink, into that project, and it failed. So at what point do you do as the Arab League has done in readmitting Syria to the Arab League, as the Gulf countries have done in repairing their relationships with Bashar al-Assad and his government? At what point do you say, well, we tried that and it didn't work, so we better adjust to the new realities? In other words, Why is America still throwing good money after bad?
Well, first of all, George, the supposed good money that never existed did not start in 2011, nor did it start in 2019. Syria has been consistently sanctioned by the United States government ever since 1979. As you know, in 78, Egypt, in a grand betrayal to the Arab world, signed Camp David Accords with the Israeli entity, with the apartheid state. And from that day on, the entire might of the foreign state apparatus, the State Department, the Treasury, OFAC, all of Washington had been laser focused on the last symbol of Arab resistance, of Arab independence, of Arab resistance to the Zionist project in the Middle East. So from 1979, we've been added to the state sponsor of terrorism of list, and we've been the only inaugural member of that list that remains to this day. Others have left and others have joined, but we've been there all along for the last 45 years. A source of pride, I would say. And then, so 79, 94, 2003, 2012, and finally 2019, and as we speak today, 2024. It did not start with the Arab Spring. It did not start with the conclusion for the active hot war in Syria. No, it's been happening for a long time. And to answer your first question, James Jeffries, the special rapporteur, the special envoy, on Syria under the Trump administration, said something that betrayed the real purpose of what the United States wants in Syria. He said that they want to create a quagmire for the Iranians and the Russians in Syria. So they want Syria to become a Vietnam, to become a sinkhole. And in a sense, it has become that. The Syrian economy is fragile. It cannot stand on its own without Iranian, Russian support. And they've succeeded from that sense. But the final other motive that is the most pessimistic is that they want to starve the Syrian people, so that the Syrian people look around them, they see no prospects for work, they see no prospects to feed their families, and they see nothing in front of them, no bread, no nothing. So they take up the brick that they see in front of them and they throw it at any authority that they see fit. So that is the purpose. They're starving the Syrian people in hopes of breaking them beyond the breaking that's already happened.
If I saw more bombing of Syria yesterday, maybe even today again, does this mean that Syria doesn't have the anti-aircraft capability of defending itself from these kind of bombing raids, or that they're not yet permitted to use it? And if it's the latter, what circumstances would need to obtain before Russia would permit the use of the kind of anti-aircraft power that could stop these bombs?
Yeah, you hit it on the nail, George. We do have the SAM systems, as you know, but the use of these systems are not in the hands of the government. At least my assessment is that they're not. And as you pointed out yesterday, we had a double-pronged attack. It wasn't just Israel. Israel struck within Syria, but at the same time, Al-Qaeda from HTS, the HTS affiliate, which is the offshoot of Al-Qaeda from Idlib region in the northwest, struck deep into Aleppo as well. So in the same day, we were struck from both sides, from Al-Qaeda and from the Zionist state. But yeah, currently, most of our decisions are, we'd like to say that they're independent, but we shot down one Israeli plane back in 2018, I believe. But I don't see us responding as vociferously as we should be, because the thing is, if Israel were to commit a mass bombing raid on Damascus, I unfortunately don't think anyone here in New York or anyone in Washington would bat an eye. They would not care. As we saw what they did in 2006 in Lebanon, and as we see what they're doing in Gaza today.
I could see that nobody would bat an eye in Washington. I'm wondering why they're not batting enough of an eye in Moscow.
That is a good question, and I also ask, why are they not more attentive in Beijing? I mean, Syria has been had played a prominent role in breaking the thorn of Western hegemony, of Western imperialism. We saw what happened in Libya. We saw what happened in Iraq, in Somalia, etc. What happened in Cambodia, Laos, Vietnam. Syria was the first success of the quote-unquote resistance of Western imperial hegemony in the region and in the world. And I'm not seeing Syria repaid for the immense burden that it carried on behalf of the free world. I'm not seeing Syria rewarded by these capitals, by Beijing and others, for the immense burden that it carried on their behalf. So I wonder as you do, how much more they would allow for the suffering of Syrians before something has to change, something breaks.
Thank you, Hekmat. Where can people see your art?